Welcome once again to Carib Nation Television. Today we have a distinguished son of the Caribbean soil, Eddy Charles, who was born in Dominica and who went on to a long life of military service as he rose to the rank of Major General, United States National Guard, U.S. Virgin Islands, also Colonel, United States Army, and now is the Commanding Officer of the Junior Reserve Officer Training Corps, JROTC. I believe he mentioned the Barracuda Battalion, where he served as a, if I can coin the term, a value systems engineer, trying to guide our young people into lives of beneficial service, not only in the military sphere, but in community. General, welcome to Carib Nation Television.
Thanks for the opportunity this morning to add some value to what you've been doing, really for the Caribbean archipelago. For those of us who have transferred from our homeland to the mainlands of these major countries.
General, before you go on, I want to thank you for your service, because you've been a serviceman. In fact, I want to share with the listening audience a fascinating story. About almost 20 years ago, I was called by Reginald Vigilant, someone of Dominican heritage who, together with his brother in business, Ian Thomlinson, both went to the University of the Virgin Islands, is what I have it from good source that they both did. And they run an IT firm, an information technology firm, Omni Systems, in Northern Virginia. And they do a lot of government contracts. And sometime in 2002, 2003, he called me and said, Gabe, you know, we have a brother who is a general in the Virgin Islands, and he's running a program in Afghanistan. He's here to see Secretary Rumsfeld. I'm taking him to dinner tonight. I know you love things military. Do you mind coming? And we came, we got together at the restaurant, and I met you, and then I said, my name's Gabriel Christian. And your response to me was, Gabriel Christian. When I was an Army cadet on Dominica in the 60s, my best friend was a guy called Wellsworth Christian. What is he to you? Or do you know him? And I said, well, that's my oldest brother. Or was my oldest brother. I don't think you caught on to that. And you said, well, where is he? I would like to speak with him. And I said to you, unfortunately, sir, I regret to advise you that he's gone on. He's passed. He passed in 90. And you were quite sad. And you said to me that when you were a cadet, you would go meet with him before you went to police headquarters to pick up your rifles for parade.
That's right.
You go there, you'd meet a young boy shining his shoes. Where's that young boy? And I said, I'm he. So from that time, we became friends, and I learned your story. General, where were you born and when were you born?
I was born in Roseau, Dominica, the part of Roseau we call Pound, and it's on Kennedy's Avenue, formerly New Street. And right now, our home turf is occupied by the Financial Center, the Prime Minister's office in Roseau. I have visited the Prime Minister, had the opportunity to visit while I was the Adjutant General, making a hometown visit to Dominica and the Cadet Corps, and sitting in the Prime Minister's office. That's Roosevelt Skerritt. He asked me, so where in Dominica are you from? And I looked at him and I said, downstairs. He says, no. Where in Dominica are you from? I said, downstairs. He said, what do you mean downstairs? I said, this building is sitting on my navel string that's buried somewhere downstairs.
That's an amazing story. Fascinating story. So tell us, General, who were your parents?
My parents were Kenneth Isidore Charles and Geraldine Veronica Hilaire Charles. I think my mom was from Roseau, that's the best I can recall, but my dad originally was from Waitika, and his mom was from Bataka, the Carib Reserve.
So you have a bit of Kalinago warrior blood in you.
How you mean? I'm talking about indigenous as indigenous can be.
Indeed, and for those who don't know, the Kalinago people or Carib people, from which the Caribbean takes its name, they've got the only territory in the Caribbean is on Dominica in the north, the Carib territory, and we're quite proud of that heritage of resistance that they exemplify. General, tell us a little bit about your siblings. How many of you?
Whoa. On my father's side, there are 14, I think 14 or 15 of us. I say all 15 of us because I ran into a young man later on in life, and just by his mannerisms and without even checking DNA, the things that he was doing, the things that he did, I just said, you're one of us. And he had to be one of us because he said his oldest sister is my oldest sister. So looks like somebody made a return trip somewhere, and this young man came about. But he hailed from St. Kitts, and I was looking at him, St. Kitts, but your older sister is my oldest sister.
Indeed.
So I'm just connecting the dots.
Indeed. Tell us a little bit about your siblings. What if you want to give us some names and what, if anything, they did?
My oldest sibling is Polly. Well, first of all, on my mother's side, my oldest sibling is Michael Mustafa Mohammed Diaz, better known as Mikey. That's my mother's first son. And after that, my mom met my dad, who helped raise Mikey. And I think Mikey he had left Dominica at a very early age, between probably around 17, 18 years old, going to England to study architecture. And I think his father, my mom said, was a Muslim from Syria, or either Syria or Jerusalem. And he himself, my mom kept, instead of sending him to his father after birth, held on to him and had him go through the Catholic Church as an acolyte and everything else. So up to today, he's still alive. He's alive and kicking today. He is a member of the Knights of Columbus, a devout Catholic through and through.
Indeed, indeed.
He lives up there in New Jersey.
Yes, indeed. What about your other siblings?
After that, we have one who died as an infant because of pneumonia. My mom said my dad used to just fling the windows open every morning, and that caused her child to catch pneumonia and died thereof. But then there was Carlton. There is Carlton, pharmacist in New Orleans, pharmacist, entrepreneur, businessman in New Orleans. There is myself. And then comes Mateo. We call him Matthew. Mateo is an accountant at the CPA level out there in New York, doing his thing in Queens, New York, East Elmhurst area. Very well accomplished young man indeed, financially. And of course, there are my sisters, Annette, used to be Annette, now Kwamaraya. Muslim. She's married to a gentleman geologist from Sierra Leone, and she has converted to Islam, and she's Kwamaraya, with one of the famous last names out of Africa, Toure, Toure. Okay, and then comes Margarita Charles, who's married to a Smith on St. Thomas, out of Totola. Margarita Charles Smith. And then after her, did I mention, how did I get there so quickly? Yeah, I mentioned Mateo, Annette, Margot, Margarita is Margot, and then Marvelyn Charles. My sister Marvelyn is an entrepreneur running a business on St. Thomas for a very long time, straight out of high school, Charlotte Amalia High School on St. Thomas. And she runs a business, hands and feet, doing cosmetology, strictly hands and feet. And with what she says, she works in St. Thomas, but she lives in Dominica. I'm putting out her little secret. She's back and forth a lot. And the only thing that's preventing her from going home right now is COVID-19. So, but on a regular basis, she's to and fro. And then comes the last of the girls, Yvonne. Yvonne Watson. Her husband passed a couple years ago, and she and Margot, they both ended up in the teaching profession as educators, special educators in the special education field, with teaching children in St. Thomas, Virgin Islands. And after that came youngest brother within, and all of that I'm talking is within the marriage. I'm going to go outside of the marriage pretty soon. Youngest brother, Conrad Augustus, also a pharmacist who lives in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. That young fellow was bright, a super bright star coming out of Chateau High School on St. Thomas. And he has made his way into the pharmacy world. So joining a group of pharmacists within the family, the eldest Carlton and his wife, who were both pharmacists in New Orleans, and then himself, and now his son is a pharmacist, married to an MD, and then my first granddaughter is right now studying pharmacy.
So you come from a family that has had quite a vocation in healing the world by providing pharmaceuticals and trying to get the health of everyone that they touch intact.
Yes. The one, Annette, the Muslim one, she is also a registered nurse who has worked with the Department of Defense in every hospital wherever her husband was stationed in Europe, whether it's Germany, Italy, and even while he was deployed in the Middle East. She maintained home in Italy and also back in the States, Fort Polk, Louisiana area. She's still working with the Veterans Administration hospital, the Veterans Administration hospital system.
You know, your family is quite distinguished, General Charles. And I just want to, at this moment, just quickly ask, what did your parents do for a living?
My father was what we call, they used to call him the boss. We just heard the men calling him boss man, bossla. He was a carpenter, a master carpenter at Bath Estate.
Yes,
Bath Estate, what we call L. Rose and Company Limited.
That's a famous lime juice company.
The lime juice company, that's right. In that area, we used to go visit him and just watch what he was doing at work, and he would give us little work to do. But very curious in it, we were learning. We were learning and seeing what was being done with the limes from the time they left the field into the crushers with the lime juice coming out, and even the oil to make what we call pear drops.
That's right. So you know about lime juice cordial?
Oh yes. Oh yes.
Yes, indeed. Dominica was famous for that all across the world. In fact, I was telling my children, I go to the supermarket, you can actually get El Rose lime juice, as was designed on Dominica, but it's no longer in Dominica. They're now in Mexico. Right. But that was a distinguished company and a great legacy. Let's move on quickly to asking you now about your early childhood education. But before I do that, your mother was she worked? She was
a housewife. My mother was a housewife, but yes, she didn't just start there. My mother was well traveled already within the Caribbean to places like St. Kitts, where she met Michael's father, and to places like St. Lucia. She talked about working with the West Indies Regiment. I can't remember if she was a member of the West Indies Regiment, but she worked with the West Indies Regiment at a camp in St. Lucia. And because she could have told me about guys like Alex Gerard, my godfather, former godfather, and Claude Bruni and those guys. She was telling me about all these guys in the West Indies Regiment.
Well, she would have worked with my father because he was in the same battalion with Alex Gerard and Bruni. They were all in the same battalion, Windward Islands Battalion C Company at VG Barracks in St. Lucia.
Exactly. As a matter of fact, she said she was bitten by a feather-lance snake. And there's a scar there was a deep scar on her leg, and she would always tell us, "C'est shaky fessa." She was bitten by a ferdinand snake.
For those who don't know what tête means, that's the French Creole that's used on Dominica. It means, you know, the snake. Tête means snake, dog's head, literally translated. General, you're born in the 1950s, I take it.
52.
52 and
October 1952. It was a Saturday morning. My mom said it was full moon, and I stretched her to the limit. I was the biggest baby at 10 pounds, 13 ounces.
Amazing, amazing.
And she said you were born on a Saturday, and the Saturday's child will work hard for his living. And I just kept this in my mind. I've got to work hard.
Talking about working hard, where did you attend school on Dominica?
First, Roseau Mixed Infant School. Roseau Mixed Infant School, right next door. As a matter of fact, the fence, the schoolyard fence was our fence.
Yes.
Right next door, Roseau Mixed Infant School.
There was at that time, right next to the school, and something that's important, there was a soft drink factory there. Was it KB Cola or KC Cola?
Sweet drink. We used to call it the Karam Sweet Drink Factory.
Yes.
It was more on the other side, closer to what we call Bath Road, and yeah, it was more on the Bath Road side. But you could have made it through Pong to get there, coming from New Street, Kennedy's Avenue.
And of course, New Street was renamed Kennedy's Avenue after the assassination of President Kennedy in 1963.
That's right. 22nd November 1963. I was playing soccer in the Windsor Park on a Friday afternoon for school. And we heard this. And everybody cleared the Windsor Park and went home to listen to the radio. Everyone was tuned into a transistor radio, listening to the detail. My dad was already in St. Thomas. And
around that time, General, a lot of Dominicans were going to work in St. Thomas. Why were they going to St. Thomas and St. Croix? Why that migration?
With St. Croix, it was sugarcane, and with St. Croix, it was sugarcane and the opening of that Hess oil factory. And at the same time, on St. Thomas, it was tourism. A lot of tourism. The influx of immigrants into the United States Virgin Islands at that time was very high, very fast. The growth was rapid. The growth was really rapid, and construction industry was thriving there. Yes. And even as of now, lots of folks from the Caribbean migrated to St. Thomas and St. Croix to participate in this construction boom, so to speak.
Yeah, so they were coming mostly from the other English-speaking islands like Dominica and St. Lucia.
They came from everywhere, including the French, Guadeloupe.
I see.
Guadeloupe and Curacao and Aruba, they came from everywhere.
It's interesting. General, so I'm a proud graduate of the Roseau Mixed Infant School myself. From the Roseau Mixed Infant School, what did you next do?
After you leave Roseau Mixed Infant School, you go through stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, and then you get promoted to the Roseau Mixed Junior School, which we call Roseau Girls School. And I always found it sinister as to why we were being sent to the Roseau Girls School instead of the Roseau Boys School at Newtown.
General, I want to testify that I also went to the Roseau Girls School after the Roseau Mixed Infant School. I'm not sure why, but there was a boys section in the Roseau Girls School right next to the Windsor Park back in 1968, 69. So after you got through the Roseau Girls School boys section, what did you next do?
Roseau Senior Boys School. That was a lot better. I graduated into the Roseau Senior Boys School, better known as Chateau. They called it Chateau. That was the nickname of the school, run by a very famous headmistress. What was her name? Miss Watley? Can't remember if it was Miss Watley, but a very famous headmistress who had taught, of course, older brothers, older uncles and so on, cousins. And the fear of going down there really hit me, going to Roseau Senior Boys School. But as as had happened with Roseau Mixed School and Roseau Mixed Junior School and at the Senior Boys School, I excel. I really excel because I always focused on academics. And there were a group of us boys like Julius Timothy, myself, Irvin Clarendon, you know, guys like us. We stayed competing all the time.
Was that when you met my brother, Dr. Christian? Well, later became a doctor, but was it Christian?
Wellsworth. I think I gravitated more with Wellsworth at the St. Mary's Academy.
Okay.
I started St. Mary's Academy in 1964. 1964.
And that's so you took the common entrance exam and then you passed and went on to the academy. Tell us about the academy. At that time, was the academy run by the Christian Brothers from Iona College?
Christian Brothers of Ireland. I was written across the top of the gate, Christian Brothers of Ireland. And most of them came from the States. And then whilst I was there, a lot of them started coming in from Canada. French-speaking brothers from Canada. And,
yes.
And that's where I took up a lot of French, a lot of my 6 years of French. Of course, in St. Mary's Academy, when you got in there, you had your choices, but you had to take Latin. You had to take Latin, first form, room 101. I had the opportunity to go back there as the Adjutant General and talk to class, talk to that class and tell them, talk to those in room 101. And I had to tell them, don't take your education lightly. You just never know where you're going to end up. You never know where you're going to end up. And I had the opportunity to give General Assembly, the headmaster, Brother Germain at that time. Brother Germain was the headmaster. He called a General Assembly and I was able to address the school, talking from the point where it was amazing. When you are a kid, you're down there in the General Assembly looking up at on the porch. We call the porch or the veranda of the second floor. And I could remember Brother Sullivan and all these guys up there talking. I know I'm up there talking to these cadets down there, but who was with me? Major Francis Richards was with me.
Yes.
Francis Richards was with me.
That's right.
And
so we're going to save that for a little bit later because I know you're jumping ahead to the revival of the Dominica Cadet Corps. But when you were at the St. Mary's Academy, you became a cadet. Tell the listening audience, for those who may not be familiar, what was the cadet program like and what is a cadet?
Yes, I remember we were in second form when they talked about starting a cadet corps in the St. Mary's Academy. And they asked for volunteers. So several of us volunteered and Wellsworth Christian was one of those. He and I would say, boy, let's go, let's join. You never know. Let's get in there, man. Let's get in there. And the guy says, but you know, Dominica Grammar School, they are very strong. You know, they're going to make us look small. I said, nah, you don't know. I said, because when we were marching as regular cadets, regular students in school, St. Mary's Academy used to give Dominica Grammar School a hard time, especially on Queen's Birthday Parade and other parades we had, like National Day Parade. So I said, if we start a cadet corps, who knows? And there was a guy named Bunting, last name Bunting, white guy, American guy from Ems Hall, the Buntings from Ems Hall. That young man was the first one appointed as an officer, as a lieutenant, as it was called back then. Yes. And it seemed that the role
was that the brother of Alan? Was that the brother of Alan Bunting?
That's right. Alan had gone on to Vietnam, as a matter of fact.
Yes.
Yes, that's the brother of Alan Bunting. And I used to spend a lot of time with the youngest brother, John Bunting and I. John Bunting and I, we spent a lot of time together. Yes. Quite a bit of time together because we were cadets and I would go to Ems Hall and meet him and we would be running around in the woods playing tactical, playing little tactics whilst his brother is shooting at us with a real rifle.
Yes, amazing. Well, thank God nothing happened awry, but nothing went awry rather. So you're at the SMA, you're a cadet, you're involved in parades. Can you tell the listening audience how the life at high school of a cadet, being a cadet, shaped you and made for your future successes?
when you look back on, and when you look back at the Cadet Corps, even at the St. Mary's Academy, you can see where discipline came in. A set of discipline came in and got me so focused. I walked so straight, so erect. My mom gave me a clout one time. She says, "Chateau duet. You walking too straight." She says, "You need to relax a bit." But this military thing was in me. I read every commando comic. Remember those comics?
Yeah,
Commandos.
The British comics called Commando.
Right. We had commandos, and I was into these comics. And all I could think about was, I'm going to be a soldier. I'm going to be a soldier. I had three choices: to be a soldier, a doctor, or a priest. I said, I'm going to be one of those: soldier, doctor, or a priest. And with the Cadet Corps in St. Mary's Academy, that really changed me. Especially with my first parade, we got out there, our first Queen's Birthday parade, and we were standing there shooting like all the others. The cops would start that fuselage.
For those people who don't recall what that was like, explain to your listening audience what the troops on parade would do during the Queen's Birthday parade of those days.
They said we will fire 3 volleys. And guess who was doing the call? Major Earl Johnson back then. We will fire 3 volleys. And the policeman at the first end would start click, 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 and that's on rehearsal time. So that the day of the parade, you would hear all these rounds going up, like a machine gun, until the last shot was fired. 3 volleys.
Yes. So you would raise the rifle, if I remember.
Right, freezing.
To your shoulder.
Right. You say freezing. And then you would remove the rifle off safe. Commence. And you say fire. And that's when the first policeman would start off, and it would go down the police rank, first rank across the Cadet Corps. Or even there was defense force. Then there was a time when defense force came in. They were before the police, and they would start, and then the police, and then the cadets. But whichever way it was, the cadets were last, and it just went down, up and down the ranks. It was beautiful. Those days were beautiful. And when you marched off, whenever we marched away from the parade field, before going back to the police station to return the rifles, man, we would march around town. And
of course, in those days, a whole carnival parade would follow you. The children of the town would follow the marching troops. Is that correct?
I did it when I was a kid, and I watched little brothers and sisters doing it when I was in the Cadet Corps.
Well, I just want to testify. I did it many a year because I was inspired by all of what you just talked about. Become the first week I joined the grammar school. In 1972, I started on a Monday. I was in the Cadet Corps on a Thursday afternoon, sir. So I wasted no time. Yes, indeed.
From 13 years old. So when people ask me, how long have you been serving in the military? I said, I'm 13.
Yes, indeed.
That's not possible. I say, well, I was a Royal Army cadet in St. Mary's Academy, and then Dominica Grammar School, and then I came to the United States and ended up in the U.S. Army.
So you moved from the grammar school to the SMA, and you became an SMA cadet as well?
No, vice versa. I was an SMA cadet. I think I was in the rank of sergeant, an SMA cadet, and I graduated from SMA 5th form. And they said, all those from SMA who graduated 5th form, your 6th form is going to be at the Dominica Grammar School, because SMA had no 6th form that year. So we all had to gravitate to the Dominica Grammar School. And with the Dominica Grammar School, part of our courses were at the convent high school with the girls. We had to go for math and so on I think math and something else. We had to go to convent high school for that. Oh man, those were the days.
Indeed.
You felt important. And if you were in the Cadet Corps, you were doubly important, because
that's right.
I then transferred to the Dominica Grammar School Cadet Corps, and kept my rank as sergeant. And really, really, I learned, matured a lot more. And we used to march off from the Dominica Grammar School yard, across the bridge, across the Bath Estate Bridge, up to J.B. Charles's, what you call an orchard?
Yeah, Emsall, at Emsall.
At Emsall. This man had all these grapefruits and so on, and we would march up there, and he would meet us there. He would meet us there. I says, Mr. What was it? J.B. Charles, Mr. Charles. I said, Mr. Charles, we are members of the Cadet Corps from Dominica Grammar School, and we would like to do some maneuvers in your open fields. And he says, go right ahead. He says, one thing, anything you pick, you eat. If you pick it, you eat it. Nobody's taking anything away in any bag.
and that was.
But everyone carried, when guys knew we were going to do that, everyone carried a penknife. You had your little penknife waiting. So when we say fall out, we disperse out into the grapefruit field and start picking grapefruits to eat.
Yes.
And we would eat our fill. I mean, you ate until you couldn't eat anymore. You could barely move, like a like a snake swallowing a whole donkey. You couldn't move.
Yes.
And then we would reassemble, fall back in, and march back down to the Dominica Grammar School.
Indeed, indeed. And that's a very interesting story. And that J.B. Charles, in fact, was the father of Prime Minister, his daughter later became Prime Minister of Dominica, Dame Mary Eugenia Charles, the first female head of state in the Caribbean and actually in the Americas. So, General Charles, so you graduated from the grammar school, and then tell us about your move to the Virgin Islands, U.S. Virgin Islands.
Well, in 1970, my dad had planned for us to move to the Virgin Islands. He left in 1963. So my entire high school career was without my dad. My entire high school career. I'm talking about the 5 years at St. Mary's Academy, from first form to fifth form, and then sixth form, Dominica Grammar School. My dad was already in St. Thomas. And I really grew up working part-time or during the summer with my godparents, Alex Giraud and Nurse Giraud at Eric's Bakery. And that's where I ran into the World War II veterans like Claude Bruni, Alex Giraud himself, and many others. And I started listening to these men's stories and very intrigued by those stories. At the same time, reading my comic books with the commandos and going through Germany and the Africa Corps and so on. So I'm formulating something in my mind is being formulated for a military career, whether I knew it or not. It was there. It was always there. And when my dad said we are moving to the Virgin Islands, to St. Thomas, we packed up one day on the 26th of July, 1970, a Sunday. All of us occupied one Liat aircraft. And we flew into St. Thomas.
We all moved as one family.
One family. One family, yes. Carlton was already on St. Thomas. It was Eddy, Mateo, Annette, Margot, Madeline, Yvonne, Conrad. Seven of us, 7 children, mother and father, came into St. Thomas.
When you got to St. Thomas, did you immediately join the U.S. Army?
No. Got into St. Thomas in July 70. The draft was on for the Vietnam War. And everybody was saying, watch out, you're going to be drafted. My mother says, I ain't cosa. No, nothing like this is going to happen. You are not joining any army. You are not going to fight for anybody in no Vietnam. She didn't even know Vietnam. Said, no, you're not going. So I listened to her. I listened to her very carefully. And I watched my father as he maneuvered, taking care of us and trying to get us settled down. 1970. I made my 18th birthday in 1970. Yes, October 1970. I made 18. At the same time, I saw in the newspapers, for all those born in 1952, your draft number is, and I looked, and what I was hearing from Vietnam veterans was, and other folks, was that if your draft number is low, you're going to be drafted. If it's high, you stand a chance you may not be drafted. But if it's low, you're going to be drafted. Well, October 18th, 1952, when I went across that algorithm and looked and saw my name, I'm not my name, but I saw my number, my date of birth number. I said, well, it's inevitable. I said, it's inevitable. I'm going to be drafted. So I went and volunteered to the draft. Somebody says, if you volunteer to the draft, you get to make a choice as to where you want to go and what you want to do. If the draft catches you, you're going straight infantry. So I'm saying, well, okay, let me go and make a choice. And I went and volunteered to the draft. And
did you? What section did you decide to choose in the armed forces?
Finance. I chose finance, the finance corps. And that's a very interesting story because at that time I worked at Chase Manhattan Bank. I worked at Chase Manhattan Bank on St. Thomas, the main branch, and as a teller. And I was a very fast teller. I would clean up lines of construction workers with their weekend paychecks so fast, you know, and I was so very well known for doing just that.
So General, you're just in the Virgin Islands for less than maybe a year at that time, and you're a teller and you're well known. Did you have a calculator in those days? Handheld calculator?
Did I have a what?
You have a calculator in those days? Did you use a calculator?
Calculator. The first time I saw a calculator was coming back from Germany in December 1974 on my return from 3 years in Germany. We were on a C-141 military aircraft that stopped in Bangor, Maine. And we got out to go use the restroom and whatnot as the plane refueled. And I went into the store and there were these Texas Instrument calculators. And we were looking at them. We were all staring at them. What are these things? And I picked up one of them. Since I worked in finance in Germany, when you calculate, I worked in finance doing travel vouchers. So I calculated a lot of currencies, whether it was from Greece, the Greek drachmas, the German mark, the Danish krona, the Italian lira, the Turkish lira, all of those currencies I had to convert because officers of the United States Armed Forces, all branches, was served by my office, my finance office, and they traveled to all the countries throughout NATO. It was a NATO thing, and also with assistant visits to other countries outside of NATO. But I learned to use those big calculating machines that look like an old cash register. Calculators in Germany that we were using in the US Army were like cash registers. And when you put in, if you were to put in like 1,000 lira divided by whatever for American dollars to get the calculation, the machine would start. I used to go to the bathroom. And come back out just in time for the answer to spit out. And you had to know math back then. If you knew your math, you know how many decimal points to move, so you can give the right change.
Yeah.
To give the right conversion. You had to figure out.
You were right there at the transition from mechanical technology in.
That's right.
In arithmetic and computing to electronic technology.
So when I landed, whilst in Maine, I picked up one of these Texas Instruments. I said, "May I try one of these?" And the salesperson said yes. And I said, "Okay." And I put the same one of my calculations from foreign currency to U.S. currency. And as you hit equal, it was there. I said, "Damn!" I said, "Come see this." And I did it again. Bam! And as soon as you hit equal, it was right there. I'm saying, holy smokes. Wait till the guys in Germany get a hold of this kind of technology. I was on my way home. I'm saying, yeah. My gosh, that's what we needed. That's what we needed in finance in Germany. I said, imagine this is available in the United States. And back there, we're still working with an old machine, looks like a cash register.
Yes.
Oh,
So let me just ask you this. So you chose the finance office. Did you have to take an exam to join the army in those days?
Oh yeah. You had to take, there was a barrage of tests, a battery of tests that you had to take when you enlisted. And we went to what we call Fort Brooks in Puerto Rico, San Juan, Puerto Rico, Fort Brooks. And there you stayed for a good 4 hours taking exams. And through these exams, it would tell the recruiter in which area you were specifically qualified. And I was very good in math. Hey, I'm coming from Dominica, man, sixth form, St. Mary's Academy and Dominica Grammar School. I did pure math and applied math. The math in those tests, for me, they were elementary. When you are coming out of Dominica Grammar School or St. Mary's Academy with pure math and applied math, the math that you run into on the US side was basically elementary.
So I've heard that said by many senior students in the United States, of course, including myself. That is, our high schools prepared us very well with O levels at Cambridge and A levels at Cambridge University. Exams in those days prepared Caribbean students very well for US university level education. Is that correct?
That is correct. That is correct. And any child coming from the diaspora who has studied well in the diaspora, coming to these islands or having to join the US Armed Forces, their Armed Forces qualification test score was very high.
Can you tell me about the importance of the grounding in education that you got in Dominica in those days and how it made for your success? Not only grounding in education in the academic side, but also the value engineering from your parents that made for your success in the US Armed Forces and in life in general.
I must tell you that our teachers back then were focused, and they were focused on the product. Our teachers back then made sure, like I've been hearing in the United States, or especially in the US Virgin Islands, and when you hear about social promotions, you hear stuff like social promotion. We never heard of any such thing back in Dominica. You made it because you made it. Super cafe, you're not getting anywhere. You had to make it. And it was always competition. I remember how we studied. I remember how we were taught and how we had to study the formulas, the theorems. We had to memorize stuff. We went to study in the botanical gardens. That was the place of study for those of us who lived in town. That was the place of study. You went into a clover of trees to study. You studied up in the branches up above, away from disturbance. And you were studying. You were studying chemistry, biology, history, religion, geography. 7 subjects, sometimes 8 subjects. You were studying to make sure you pass. And you were studying, you had to study to move from grade to grade. First form, second form, third form, fourth, fifth, sixth. And every term, I tried to stay on the honor roll from first form all the way to fifth form.
General, I just want to ask a question. I remember my brother going in the evening to something called night study. Can you tell us about night study?
Night study. If you lived in town, or you lived in the hostel for Dominica Grammar School or St. Mary's Academy, they both had night study. About 7 o'clock in the evening, you were required to go to school up until 9. 7 to 9, you were in night school. It's not night school learning, it was study hall. It was called study hall, mandatory. So the folks who had to go back to the countryside, like Maho, Massac, those places, those guys went home. But those of us who stayed in town, if you lived in Goodwill from Santa Roma coming on back down, Lago and all those places, oh yeah, you had to be in night school. It also included the guys as far as Loubière. They would probably excuse the ones from Point Michel. But as far as Loubière, all of Newtown going to Louviers, yes, Citronnier, and then Louviers, you had to attend night school.
At the back, your background is a symbol. Can you tell us what that symbol represents? It's a cross, and the emblem is not quite clear, but tell us what that symbol represents and why it's important to have it behind you.
Oh, that's the symbol of the Junior ROTC program, the unit crest of the Barracuda Battalion. This is now registered at the National Institute of Heraldry, where all military symbols are registered. So this one represents the Barracuda Battalion of the St. Croix Educational Complex High School in St. Croix in the Virgin Islands of the United States. And it shows the color of the school, which is blue and gray or silver, that of the barracuda, the fish, and of course the blue, this blue representing the blue of the Caribbean Sea.
Yes, indeed. And so once you retired from the U.S. Army, you then became, what would I call it, the administrator or commanding officer of the Junior Reserve Officer Training Corps, JROTC?
Now, really, when I left, let's see, this story takes so many turns. As a retired officer of the United States Army, and I retired a regular federal rank of colonel, it gives me the opportunity to apply for senior instructor status with the Junior ROTC program. I heard of the Junior ROTC program from a colleague when I was on my way to take up a contract in Africa, after having retired from U.S. Army, from the U.S. Africa Command in Germany. And this young man mentioned to me, so instead of leaving this territory and going all the way to Africa to mentor somebody else, why don't you stay and help us mentor some of these kids? I said, what are you talking about? He says, well, in Junior ROTC. I said, well, I'm accustomed of teaching, but I've been teaching at a much higher level, not high school. I've been teaching college level. I'm a graduate of War College. I've been teaching I've been running the War College program in Afghanistan, what we call the Senior Command and Staff Course for the Afghan National Army. So I've been teaching basically Afghan colonels and generals. And now you're asking me to come and help you teach, to come and help you teach high school. That's very different. Anyway, I'll take a pass and see what it's all about. So I went on the internet to the Junior ROTC portal and started looking at the instructor qualification requirements. And in going through, I realized, hey, there is an opportunity to give back. It's a very unique opportunity to give back to the youth from all these years of military service. And I went through the training and decided, okay, I'll think about it. He said there's an opening at one of the schools, high school on St. Thomas, and I applied for the position. And that high school took too long to invite me in. After a couple of interviews, the other high school saw an opportunity of bringing me in, and the principal reached out to me, called me in and said, you are hired. Before the interview started, she said, let me just let you know, first of all, you're hired. Now let's go in for the interview. I said, what makes you so sure? She said, I've seen you operate as the Adjutant General of the National Guard. I've seen you operate. So I know you are no nonsense person. And what I need is a program that is serious with a lot of discipline. And I think you're going to do just well.
And how long have you been with the program, General Charles?
And I decided I was joining this program and do this until the lady retired, which was for 3 years. That was 2009, August 2009. She says she's retiring in October 2012. I said, perfect. That's a perfect fit. I'll do it. And when you retire, I'll retire. Well, she didn't retire. She didn't retire until a couple of years ago. So needless to say, I spent 6 years doing this on St. Thomas. And then I decided, let me try to get a program started on St. Croix. We've been looking at the largest high school in St. Croix since 1995. It's the St. Croix Educational Complex High School. And the opportunity to start a junior ROTC program was always there, but it just couldn't come to fruition because the guy who ran the school as the principal at that time was not open to the military coming into his school. And whilst I was at Udoroken on St. Thomas, I decided, let me approach this gentleman for one last time. And he said, I'll consider it. He'll think about it. And he sent me to another gentleman at the annex called the vocational side of the complex. And this gentleman, Mr. Willard John, says, man, we would like to have this program. But, you know, I am running a program, CTEC, Career Technical Education. Mine is a program. A program cannot host a program. So you need to go back to the principal of the educational side, of the school side, the academic side, and tell him that he needs to start a program, not me. Well, that was in 2011. Something happened. Anyway, something happened later on where this principal of the vocational side became the principal of the whole complex. And the gentleman who was principal was transferred to a middle school or elementary school. No, he was transferred to a middle school. He was transferred to a middle school. And since then, he ran to become a Virgin Islands senator.
So that allowed for an opening for you to become the director then of the program at the St. Croix facility.
Yes, it did open the opportunity to submit an application, and the application came in at a time when I was just completing my 6th year at Udoroken during the summer, going to summer camp in Puerto Rico, that this order came from Cadet Command saying, the program at the St. Croix Educational Complex is authorized and must start no later than the 1st of August, 2015.
Outstanding.
Didn't have time to say goodbye to my cadets in the 11th grade, 10th grade, 9th grade of Udoroken. Had no time at all.
Let me ask you, General, so how many, in the time you spent at Udoroken, how many cadets you would say approximately went through your program?
Let's see. I got there at the time when the program was 179 strong. When I left, the program was 312. Each year I graduated about 34. So 34, 19 from 6 years. 6 years of graduating at least 34 cadets each time. Graduated.
Graduated, that's outstanding.
So that's about 190 cadets right there.
Yes.
Graduated. Not to mention all those who came after, all those who were down there below. And moving on through to St. Thomas, coming to St. Croix to start this program, I came to really start the program and to leave it after it would have been up and running proficiently. I would make my exit after 3 years. Well, it's 2021.
You love with the program to such a degree that you're still there, and how many students are now in your program?
Right, there are 141. There was about the highest we went up to was 187, and since as a result of Hurricanes Irma and Maria, a lot of the folks had to transfer from here to the mainland, so the numbers went down quite a bit. But it's looking to come back up. I think by this September, we should be almost probably about 175 or somewhere close to 200.
Outstanding. Before we go on to your education and your career in the armed forces, there's an incident that I want you to just talk about. It was a very tragic incident in Dominican history. And that's the Carnival Fire of 1963 that killed your stepfather, your godfather, Eric Chillingford, the entrepreneur and the mechanical engineer of Vauxhall Company in the Carnival Fire of February 25th, 1963. Just tell us about that, because you were very helpful in helping myself and Dr. Irving W. Andre produce that book, Death by Fire, the explosive story of the 1963 Carnival tragedy. How old were you in 1963, General?
1963, 11 years old.
Tell us about that. Tell us what happened on that day.
11 years old. I was born in 52, October 52. The fire was in February 63. I wasn't 11 years old yet. Oh my goodness.
But before you tell us about the fire, you had a relationship with Eric Chillingford. How did that relationship come about? And then you can tell us about the fire, what you know.
His mother, Nurse Gerard, was my godmother from christening, baptism, Roman Catholic. And oh my God, was my godmother. And I started working at the bakery when I was in high school. I was 11 years old. And I worked at the bakery during the summer and every weekend from then. During the summer and every school break, every holiday break, and every weekend from then.
Are you talking about the Eric's Bakery, which was the first commercial bakery of its kind in the history of the Eastern Caribbean?
That's right.
They not only made bread and cakes, but they also made crackers as well.
Biscuit factory, at the biscuit factory.
Yes.
There was a biscuit factory annex.
So,
yes.
So you're saying to me in the 1960s, just so I can understand this and the history can be made, record can be made, Dominica had a biscuit factory making biscuits that were sealed in a plastic bag.
That's right.
Like Crick's crackers. It was Eric Bakery's crackers.
Right. Exported to Trinidad and Barbados and the other islands.
Amazing.
Yes, indeed.
So you worked there during the time you were in high school, but take us back then to the fire of 1963. Tell us about that day, what you recall, what you saw.
Well, let's see. The fire was in 63. 1964, I started high school. I had to go to my godmother's home. Well, I went to my godmother's home. You know, the normal thing, where you go to church in Dominica, and after church, you end up passing, you visit your godparents, you visit your aunts, uncles, and whatnot.
Yes.
And that was one of the things that I used to do, go visit my godparents. Go visit godparents. And I remember this fire in Carnival on the Sunday afternoon, when everything is supposed to be the most joyous and free, because all the bands were in their best costumes. And Eric Chillingford had just returned. He had recently returned from England and started the Bedford Company in Roseau, close to the new bridge. And all these new Bedford trucks will permeate in Dominica. I mean, all the transport from before were being replaced by these Bedford trucks for 5-ton, 3-ton, 1-ton trucks. And
just so the listening audience knows, Eric Chillingford was, we believe, the first person of African descent to graduate as a mechanical engineer from General Motors Institute at Luton, England. He gone to that institute in 1957, thereabouts, and returned in 1961, 62. So he was maybe, we believe the record reflects that he was most likely the first professionally trained mechanical engineer working on the island at that time, and had opened a mechanic shop, and they were selling Bedfords, as you said, and Vauxhall cars as well.
Right.
And it was Carnival Monday, by the way. Carnival Sunday would have been the float parade. Carnival Monday was the actual carnival, and they were wearing a special costume called sensei, which is made of
with the fine rope. Sensei with the fine rope, and as I came to understand sometime after that, they they were told not to do so, you know, not to use diesel to help with the thinning of the rope, to make the costume, to get it to that fine, like angel hair type.
Actually, gasoline. They would use gasoline. But the Commission of Inquiry report said that that was not used. But the day of the fire, the February 25th, that Carnival Monday, were you anywhere near that band?
Right behind it. We were right behind. Myself and other friends were right behind that band.
In fact, was Christian and said he was there with Emmanuel Low-Black. So that must have been the same group then.
We were together. We were together. We limed together. We stayed together, moving from band to band. And whenever something happens in a crowd, you see people running. All of a sudden, people are running. And when people are running towards us, we instinctively turn to run also. But people were running in different directions and we couldn't tell which way to run. And we started seeing the smoke. There was smoke and there were flames and people were screaming. So I can't even remember which direction I took. Somehow I ended up by the Methodist church. Somehow I ended up by the Methodist church coming back down to Frampton area. I think I may have ran up Monfidel, passed around in front of the Catholic church and came around by the Methodist church to come down by AC Chillingford. Yes. I think that's what may have happened. All right. But then we found out that there was a fire and people were burned and you could see the skin on the ground. The skin was on the ground. And this guy, Rupert Lance, I saw him. His face was all burnt up. I saw, we didn't have ambulances then, but cars were taking people to the hospital. And I remember George James, who lived, oh my God, that name just came in. George James was a musician, I think, and he lived in our neighborhood on Kennedy's Avenue. And he was transported out. I understand he was transported out and he died.
Yeah, so Eddy Martin died on that day.
Eddy Martin died. Oh my goodness.
And George James and Eric Chillingford were wounded. They were hospitalized at the Princess Margaret Hospital, and they were later flown out to University Hospital, Mona, Jamaica. And unfortunately, they died one after the other. I believe Eric died first, and then George died later, or one or the other. But they both died in Jamaica and were brought back home for huge funeral ceremonies. And of course, your work, your help with that work we did in 2007, Death by Fire, that book was well received. And we want to thank you again for giving us that information. I remember you said there was a band from Newtown, Thunderbirds.
Thunderbirds, that's right.
They were singing a song.
As a matter of fact, it happened in the Thunderbirds band. And they came up with a song the very next day. Yo jalo nu Mexican, yo mete dife banu, yo jalo nu. They are jealous of us. They were jealous of us and they put fire for us. It was a Mexican band.
That's right. So they say yo jalo nu Mexican. That means they're jealous of us Mexicans and they've put fire on us. And of course, it was the Mexican band. They had bandoleros and rifles and Mexican, like the famous Mexican revolutionary Emiliano Zapata. Thank you for that little recall there. So now you're in the U.S. Armed Forces during the Vietnam War. Did you go to Vietnam?
No, I did not go to Vietnam. As a matter of fact, out of basic training in Fort Jackson, South Carolina, only one young man from Puerto Rico received orders saying he's going to APO San Francisco. And he was jumping up. I'm going to San Francisco. I'm going to San Francisco. I got orders sending me for advanced individual training on Fort Jackson, later to be sent to Belgium for NATO. But others got to go to advanced individual training for infantry. But this guy's orders said he's going to San Francisco, APO San Francisco. And strangely enough, it was after basic training. And that was the weird part. It was right after basic training. So the drill sergeant said, come here, give me that. Took his order and read it. says RVN, APO San Francisco. RVN, Republic of Vietnam, you idiot.
So you actually was going to Vietnam, and but you was going through San Francisco.
Through San Francisco.
Because that's on the West Coast, which is where you last
That's right.
based before you take the trip across the Pacific.
Now, looking back then, I'm trying to figure out why was he being taken straight out of basic training to go to Vietnam? I couldn't figure that one out.
So, General, tell us what colleges you attended during the course of your service and the training that the qualifications that you acquired.
Okay, in my military career, regular army, I served in Germany as first of all, from Fort Jackson, South Carolina. Because of my banking experience, I was not sent to finance school. I refused to go to a clerk school because I suspected when you go to a clerk school, you're going to end up typing. You're going to end up in someplace typing in a personnel administrative center and won't go anywhere. I decided I wasn't going there, and I refused. And I was sent to see a sergeant. I told him, look, accounting. Why don't you all give me accounting? Send me to accounting. He said, well, you have to go to clerk school first before you go to accounting. I said, nope, that's not going to work. That's not going to work. I said, that's a trick to get me into clerk school. I am not going. And back then, my Dominican accent was very strong and I spoke very fast. And they said, you know what? We'll send you to a sergeant major up the street. So one sergeant major called another sergeant major and said, I have this young man who is, you could help him. Put him to work. I went to the finance office on Fort Jackson, South Carolina. The sergeant major of the finance office received me. And he says, well, what's your background? And I said, I worked in Chase Manhattan Bank in the Virgin Islands. I was a teller and I count money very fast and I'm interested in accounting. He says, okay, first we'll start you off here as a cashier. But before you do any cashing, before we put you on orders to be a cashier, we need to see what you can do. And he brought me in and sat me down with a specialist. And the specialist is there this guy is trying to teach me how to count money. I'm looking at him, I said, that's not the way you count money, man. I said, give me that, give me the stack, and wrote it like brr, 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 and started counting. I said, that's how you count money. He said, no, in a regular army, in the army, you have to count it one by one by one. I said, how long is it going to take you to count this stack of money? Are you crazy? And I started. And he said, don't make any mistakes. If you make a mistake, you'll have to start all over. I said, look, these fingers, I had courses from the American Institute of Banking, and these fingers are foolproof. You understand me? No counterfeit can slip through these fingers. You learn to feel money. You learn to feel the texture of the American dollar. Trust me. And not one fake can slip through. And he did try it. And my finger slipped. It'll skid. And I came back and checked. There was a counterfeit. Pull it out. I said, you can't do that. But I just mastered the art of counting money and counted everything they had in the vault because they were trying to prove what the balance was. And I did that. And from then they put me on vouchers to do accounting and, to type little vouchers and so on. And all this monotonous work eventually was getting to me somehow. And this was the first time I felt heat in the United States. The summer, June 1972, June caught me in Fort Jackson, South Carolina, in a little room doing vouchers. And this heat, there was no AC in the building back then. And the guy says, look, you're gonna have to open up the windows. I said, there ain't no window. There's no window. And the conventional rainfall by that time, I'm talking about lightning strikes. The sound of thunder and lightning. I've never heard lightning like that before, nor seen that kind of lightning in Dominica. And it reminds me of what I used to study in geography about conventional rainfall on the mainland United States in places like Jamaica, because in Dominica, we didn't have that kind of rainfall. You understand? With yes. The loud thunder and lightning strikes every afternoon. Anyway, I got orders sitting in that place. I received orders that says I was going to APO New York, Belgium, NATO. And I said, wow. He asked me, how did you get that assignment? I said, I don't know. And then it says LFR, language French. I said, because I speak French.
Great. So your language skills from Dominica, having gone to the St. Mary's Academy, served you.
6 years of French in Dominica. 6 years of French in Dominica. Got me the language specialty. As a matter of fact, you did ask me about the battery of tests that you had to take when you joined the military. You sat and you took tests. And you took tests for, it's a battery of tests. The better you did, the more tests you took. Because they were testing your to what extent your education was. And when it came to language, I passed the language test for French. They gave me the language test for Spanish. They gave me the language test for German, because I did German in sixth form in Dominica Grammar School. I certified for the language in French, not for Spanish and German, but I certified for the one in French. And I got it.
Are you saying to me that you had a German instructor at the grammar school?
Frau Dr. Mueller.
Oh, yes, Dr. Mueller.
Frau Dr. Mueller.
I remember her.
As a matter of fact, she said, I am teaching you all Hochdeutsch, which is high German. The kind of German, she says, ich bin ein Berliner. She was from Berlin.
I see.
So she taught us Hochdeutsch. When I got into Germany, which is another story, when I got into Germany and because I wanted to get the hell out of Belgium, my goodness. If you are a Dominican and you were in Belgium, at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, the fog rolled in. The place you can't see, and that was in August, you can't see, when the fog rolled in, you couldn't see 50 yards in front of you. And the darker it get, and the later it got, the shorter the distance you could see in front of you.
I see.
So basically at night, I'm in a building by myself. And I don't know if you saw the movie, The Candyman. The Candyman would come in and chop up, cut up those girls and so on. That's what's going through my mind. The Candyman. In the middle of the night, a bell is stolen. I had seen a movie by my godparents, by the Giroux, called The Blue Room, with all these murders and stuff. I'm in this building, the fog, I can't see beyond the fog. And I'm in the room by myself, in a building by myself. I said, to hell with it, I'm not staying here. I went to the colonel and I said, Colonel, I need a transfer. I need to go somewhere else. This place is not for me. Too much fog. This looks like vampire country. I said, is this Transylvania by chance? I said, I need to get out of here. I said, I cannot stay here. And by the way, it was a beautiful installation. I was at SHAPE headquarters for, what they call Supreme Headquarters, Allied Powers Europe. All the nations of NATO were there. I was there. I played cricket. I'm an American soldier. I played cricket and I played football, soccer, with the Brits.
Yes, of course.
The Brits invited me to play cricket with them because they were missing a man. And I happened to be on the sidelines watching. The Americans didn't like that. They said, what are you doing? I said, I'm going to play cricket. He said, you're supposed to be playing baseball with us. I said, I don't know how to play that. He said, so why? I said, I can't play baseball. That's my sport over there, cricket and soccer. They said, you're supposed to play in football and baseball. And as a result of that, they would not give me any more what we call 1 day a week, you would get free time to go play sports, to go participate in physical activity. They said, my physical activity has been curtailed because I use it to go and play a foreign sport instead of playing baseball or football.
Yes, indeed. And when they say football, they don't mean soccer. They mean like American football.
They mean American football. I say, you're not going to run it. I said, let me tell you something. If I join this game and you all hit me, somebody's going to get hurt.
Yes, yes.
And I said, this is just not working. And I said, this baseball thing, I said, that's like rounders. I can't play that.
Rounders is in Dominica a female sport, right?
Yep.
Let me ask you a few questions.
I'm not playing no rounders. It look like baseball, look like rounders. I'm not playing it.
Yes, indeed. So you're in Germany now. you've been in Belgium before, but you've got fluency in French and you speak some German, and that all of that help provide you with a base for success. So as far as academic institutions, can you tell me what academic institutions you attended while in the armed forces?
Okay, as an officer, first of all, I went to the Infantry Officer Candidate School in Fort Benning, Georgia. And after that, I went to the Military Police Officer Basic Course. I completed the Military Police Officer Advanced Course, all those in Fort McClellan, Alabama. I have since done the Command and General Staff College. Other courses in between, like NBC Officer, Nuclear Biological Chemical Officer courses that I had done. I went to the Command and General Staff College in Fort Leavenworth, Kansas. I did that course. As a matter of fact, I did that one in non-residency whilst I was doing other courses for college. You try to do many courses at the same time. As a matter of fact, I got my commission and I had not yet received a bachelor's degree.
I see.
I had not yet received my bachelor's degree. So I was doing many things at the same time, whilst also supervising officers themselves who had degrees.
So when did you receive your bachelor's degree, General Charles?
Oh my God, bachelor's degree. Find a certificate somewhere.
But would it have been in the 70s?
No, in the 70s, I was very young. I think in the 90s.
That's okay. I mean, what it is, you can just tell us, because you went to all these colleges and schools in the service.
But I did the Command General Staff College. And I had to do my bachelor's degree before that. So I did bachelor's degree at, who did I do that with? New York Institute of Technology, NYIT.
Okay.
I did a master's degree in criminal justice with Kaplan University online. Online, like most military personnel, we are so engrossed in what we are doing full time that a lot of us have had to do schooling online or part time in between. So I did that, and I also went for my senior service college program. I went as a fellow to the Inter-American Defense College run by the Organization of American States, OAS, in Washington, D.C. on Fort McNair. And there, on reporting to that college, I found out that we no habla inglés aquí. He says, we don't speak English here. We speak French, Spanish, and Portuguese.
I see.
And my next question to the lady was, ¿Dónde está la biblioteca? And she says, abajo, downstairs. I went down to their library, gathered all the cassette tapes I could find on Spanish, and played them in my car as I drove everywhere around Washington, D.C. and going back and forth to school. And I picked up Spanish.
Outstanding.
Spanish, official Spanish, to the point for my thesis in Spanish.
Yes.
I was evaluated by some gentleman from Harvard University. They had read my thesis and to edit it, and I had to brief 11 general officers. I had to defend my thesis in front of 11 general officers from 11 countries of South America. And basically my paper was on comparing the Inter-American Defense Board and the Inter-American Defense Board and the Organization of American States to NATO and the Western European Union. NATO is the political arm. The Western European Union is the military arm of NATO, minus America and Canada.
I see.
With Canada and the United States, they all are NATO.
I see.
When you take out those two, it's the Western European Union.
Outstanding. This is a good time, maybe, General, to segue into, as we come to the end of what has been a splendid interview, the importance of your training for the Caribbean. The Caribbean in the 21st century is facing multiple a multitude of challenges. We have issues of youth delinquency, crime, money laundering, issues of integrity and leadership. We have the rise of China, and there are persons who have concerns that may affect our democratic underpinning. What comments do you have in way of those challenges that face us in way of issues of employment, quality of life, global warming, the like? You know, as a military officer, you've had to embrace quite a few bits of analysis in the military sphere, but now you are a civilian/military leadership trainer, and you're training the future leadership of our region, at least in the Virgin Islands. Comment as you will on some of those issues that I've raised.
First of all, let me say that when you attend your senior military course, War College, if you're a graduate of the War College, you get to speak on behalf of the United States. What they tell you, you can speak within your realm of authority. And when you attend courses like the National Security Course or the National Security Seminar, they also say you can speak on behalf of the United States. The reason for you attending these schools is so that you can speak to the public on behalf of the United States within your realm of authority. So when you hear certain things taking place in certain countries, even from the Command General Staff College, the intermediate level, you learn that national security strategy requires the United States to be involved in nations around the world. Because you cannot, for instance, put together a jumbo jet, a 747, a 727, a 777. You can't put one of those together unless you are getting raw material from at least 32 countries around the globe. And it's from that aspect, it hits you. You've got to have strategic interests in certain countries. Chile, copper. Chile is copper. If you know how much copper, how much wiring runs through an aircraft, a 747 or even a 777 today, all right? Where is the cockpit coming from? The cockpit is being flown from France. The tires, rubber, and just think, the myriad of parts that make up this flying beast. 32 countries provide raw material to bring this thing together. So when you look at that, you get an understanding of what it means to have strategic interests around the globe. When you think of Africa, when you think of China, when you think of Europe, when you think of the Caribbean, when you think of the colonialism, then your heart is starting to pound and telling you, hey, there's something you didn't realize that was happening to you back then. Back then, you were in Dominica. Your father worked at Rose & Co. The bananas were being shipped by Gist Industries. The limes and the lime juice was being shipped out by Rose & Co. Going to England. In England, you saw bananas in supermarkets that look so beautiful, look like they came from heaven, no blemish. The lime juice was pure. But all of this was coming from these little islands, from these countries, these undeveloped countries, going into a developed country. And you start to reflect and say, oh my God, I've been part of this thing. But what part did you play? What part were you playing? So I realized what part I was playing. What I'm interested in now is what part am I going to play now? Because now I've got to talk, I've got to say what happened, I've got to explain to the youth of today what is going on, what has happened, and how to avert or prevent or not to be sucked in by what is about or what could happen now to us again. And I also look at our brothers in Africa and start putting things together. You look at America, see what America has gotten out of the rest of the world. You look at Europe, see what Europe has gotten out of the rest of the world, particularly Africa. You look at Japan, see what Japan has gotten out of the rest of the world, and Japan built up to where it is now. And you look at China and see where China came from. And now look where China is. And look what China is doing actively, worldwide, on so many fronts. And sometimes it's scary. It's scary. It can be scary if you are not awake. Because one of these days we are going to wake up and we're going to see there's a new sheriff in town. And that sheriff is waving that red flag with those yellow stars. This is going to be China. Notwithstanding military might, they are not quite there with military might, but the economic might they do have. They do have. And at the War College, you get to study, you get to do some deep studying of some countries around the world, especially the countries that have those natural resources, those raw materials that is needed to fuel some of the advancement in technology we have today.
General Charles, as a person of the African diaspora who served in the armed forces, what would your advice be for leaders in Africa, leaders in the Caribbean, in way of understanding what you said about colonialism, how we produced the bananas, we produced the lime oil, and you know what role we played. We were the hewers of wood and the carriers of water. We were the cogs in the wheel that someone else turned. And a lot of that wealth was extracted and did not benefit our people. How do we work in a way through democracy, through industry, through learning to avoid a repeat of that colonial experience?
I am part of the brain drain. I consider myself part of the brain drain. We have to slow that process down and go back. We've got to slow that process down. And we've got to somehow point back. We have to give a detour, so to speak. All right, you are here. You have made it. You've qualified. You spend a few years. You are established. I think you need to go back. It's time to go back.
Now, General, that's a very important point because about 20 years ago, we started the Dominica Academy of Arts and Sciences, which you know very well because
yes,
you were listed on there. In fact, in 2003, I believe, you came to Dominica to speak to the cadets at the St. Mary's Academy, your old school, Dominica Grammar School, your old school. You spoke at Cadet Day. And the idea behind the academy was similar to that of the Jewish diaspora, which went back and rebuilt and built up Israel into the technological power that it is today. Are you saying that we must then have this brain drain be a brain gain, either by going back or by creating through internet protocol, that kind of connective tissue between the diaspora and our islands, the diaspora and Africa, so that we can serve the development needs in a way that promotes economic development, rule of law, democracy?
Yes, it's got to happen. We've got to show mistakes were made during our time. Mistakes, I can say mistakes were made during our time. We by now have learned from those mistakes. We have learned from those mistakes. When I look at where Dominicans like myself are advancing other countries, in technology, in so many career fields. Think, suppose all these folks, suppose we all went home. Suppose we all were to go home. But you see, home cannot accommodate us, so to speak, because the engines that we work with are not at home.
Yeah, we don't have the economy.
Right.
So how do we use internet technology to make an impact, even if we're not physically on the ground, through our competence, through our finance, through our networking, through our education? How do we do that, even if we're not physically there on a permanent basis?
Well, COVID-19, I say, in everything give thanks. So says the good book. In everything give thanks. What the saying is, what the devil meant for bad, God is going to use it for good.
Yes.
COVID-19, for instance, the perfect example. It crippled economies, brought the world to a standstill. The only time that ever happened before, most recently, was 9/11, when America shut down all airports and all aircraft around the world were grounded because they didn't know where the next attack was going to come from. COVID-19 did that. Shut the skies down around the world. Not just America, the world. Shut everything down except supermarkets, the service industry, so to speak. The very basic of the service industry remained operational so that folks could eat, so that folks could get to eat and refuel their vehicles, so to speak. Everything else, education was shut down. And then we had to see, where do we go from here? Are we just going to sit there, or are we going to do something? Are our children going to be left in this suspense state, or are we going to do something about it? And within a year, we are up and running. I mean, education by Zoom, by Teams, by Schoology, all of those platforms are running. Thank God for the internet, but thank God for COVID-19. What, especially in the Virgin Islands, the US Virgin Islands, when on the mainland, most students had the basic laptop with which to go to school as mandatory, as a given. In many schools, in poor what you call neighborhoods within the United States, especially the black schools, poor black schools and Indian schools and other schools, a child couldn't think of having a computer as part of the pens and pencils. Now you can't talk about going to school without a computer. You just can't. It's not for college anymore. It's for high school. No, it's for middle school. No, it's for grade school. All the way to grade school. COVID-19 has said, hey, you must change, you must adapt and overcome.
So you're saying that every cloud essentially has a silver lining, and the silver lining, as in this interview, which is by Zoom, has provided us with the means, the technology has been sharpened that can help the Caribbean diaspora, the African diaspora, to work those technological platforms to connect, to do finance, to connect, to teach science, technology, and the rest. You know, so we are in a better place. You're saying to me to use those means than we were prior to COVID-19. Is that your essential point?
That's exactly what I'm saying.
Thank you so much for saying that. Yes.
You see, remember telemedicine.
Yes.
Telemedicine is using the same platforms and has gone by leaps and bounds now because it was already established. Now it's gone even further. We had what you call online education, the online campuses. The online campuses was yes, maybe some had it and some didn't, and some, guess what? Now some are realizing the online campus is it.
Yes.
Understand? It is it.
So we will
It
never
is there.
return to things pre-COVID. In a sense, it will always be that the COVID world has changed human existence forever. As we conclude, General, I want you to see if you can give us some bullet points. Tell me the value of certain things. Patience. How much of a virtue is that as a Black soldier in the US Army dealing with issues of racial prejudice?
If you are impatient, you're going to run into trouble. If you are impatient, you will burn. We have the same what you call crash and burn. You will crash and burn if you are impatient. What they said, and in the Virgin Islands, there's a saying, hurry dog, it's raw meat. That's a Crucian saying, hurry dog, it's raw meat.
That's right.
Take your time. Everything, there's a man above, there is a supreme being above that is guiding your steps. It says the steps of a good man are ordered by the Lord. If you have faith, and it doesn't matter which religion you belong to, if you have faith, it's going to work out. It will work out. If you have faith and you believe in what you believe, it'll work out. And I believe very strongly that when you wait, it says, those that wait on the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings as eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint. That is so true in everyday life. You just don't know. If I had to reflect on you back there, shining shoes, the little fella shining Wellsworth shoes, I'm saying, now he is in Maryland. He has been part of this, that. Oh my goodness. Where these kids came from? Where did we come from?
Right.
What are we doing here? Wherever we are, what are we doing where we are? Yes. And then we have offspring who are getting ready to do much more than what we ourselves have accomplished.
As a matter of fact, General, I think you were speaking to me not long ago when you said to me some of your, either your children or your relatives, one is in the Coast Guard, or, you know, some interesting developments.
Yes. My nephew, my sister's son, is a graduate of the Coast Guard Academy. He is now a lieutenant commander. He's a lieutenant commander in Connecticut.
Congratulations.
I have a granddaughter who is in pharmacy school right now. She's in pharmacy school, graduate level. My son is an Army instructor at the Junior ROTC program. After 26 years of service in the regular Army, retiring as a first sergeant and paratrooper, a master paratrooper. He is now teaching at Junior ROTC at the next high school, the sister high school on St. Croix. And the list goes on and on. My brothers are scattered throughout the United States doing their thing.
So essentially what you've said to me, that despite the vicissitudes of racial segregation in the past or racial prejudice, we have, by faith, by diligent effort, by that patience, which is a virtue, been able to not only survive, but to thrive. So would that be your message for young ones who might be frustrated when they look at George Floyd's killing? Of course, you have the rise of Black Lives Matter. What is the message to young African Americans and other minorities when they see difficulty? What should they do to adopt the value systems that will allow for them to make a better day, not only for themselves, but the communities within which they live?
The challenges posed by racial disharmony in the United States, especially after the fire was lit, the flame was lit by number 45. The challenges being faced now by our people is going to require them to be not just patient, you gotta think. There's the old saying, look before you leap. But think before you open your mouth. It says open mouth, insert foot. Think first. You have to be smarter than the police officer, especially the white police officer. And sometimes you have black police officers who are with them, or Hispanic or Asian or other police, other ethnic groups who are with them, who want to follow. Remember Abu Ghraib prison in Iraq?
Yes.
The kind, we have soldiers who engaged in those atrocities against prisoners of war, who otherwise, had they not been with these people there, they would never have participated in those kinds of things if they were on their own separate.
So you're saying that you can be in a culture, but be careful not to be polluted by it.
That's right. You have to maintain who you are. You got to realize who you are. You have to realize who you are. When you're in a culture like what number 45, if you were in that administration, the people in that administration had to say to themselves, hey, I'm part of this, but I'm not in this. You understand? Yes, I'm working in this environment, but no. There's a time you got to say, back off. You gotta back the hell up. I'm not going to be part of this. The separation of children from their family, from their parents at the border. My wife is calling the code. Oh, 1 second. Yeah. The separation of the children at the border. The violation of some real laws within the United States. The Hatch Act. Violation of the Hatch Act by so many on a large scale.
And for those who may not know, the Hatch Act is basically that which precludes civil servants, employees of the government,
from engaging right.
in partisan politics.
Right. The conduct of a campaign, the conduct of campaign activities at the White House. Blatant. There's so many blatant things. You got to say, what is going on? This is not the America I know, and I didn't sign up for that. And you got to, General Mattis, for instance. General Mattis, he walked out.
That's right. Good for him.
He walked out, but he stayed silent. He was not supposed to stay silent. There's a time, and everything has its time. Everything has its time. I'm saying, no, these guys should have put that man in his place from the very first time he opened his mouth and said John McCain, a prisoner of war in a Hanoi Hilton, was a coward. They should have put him in his place then. And that would have stopped this guy dead in his tracks. There was a time these people were supposed to walk away and say, hey, no. If that's the road you're going on, I'm not with you. We can't do this.
Yes, indeed. So that was
values,
the failure.
Values. You got to stand up for values.
Yes. As we wrap up, General Charles, I want to thank you so much for what you did in service to exemplify the best of our culture in way of excellence. But now in your golden years, you're still taking time off to train young people. Any final word to our young Caribbean leadership as to what principles and character traits they should exemplify? What's the best?
If I was supposed to say something to people of the Caribbean or leaders in the Caribbean, I'd say keep your eyes open. Keep your eyes open. Keep your eye on the prize. I remember George Bush saying, fool me once, shame on you. We got to keep our eyes wide open on what is happening. We get a lot of help from China. We are getting a lot of help from China. There's always a price to pay. There's always a price to pay. The thing is, what is the cost? How high is that price? How high is that price? I am talking with brothers on the motherland asking the same question. How can we connect to all these various states of the 52 countries down there? How, of the 55 countries on the motherland, how can we get folks connected to say, wake up, wake up, look around, see what's happening. Just wake up. This ain't a damn dream. This stuff is real. And one of these days, 2049, that's the target date. Between 2047 and 2049, China celebrates 100 years as the People's Republic of China. 100 years as the People's Republic of China. Taiwan, they'll eat up Taiwan. They'll swallow up Taiwan, just like Hong Kong is. Hong Kong, it by default had to go back, yes, and was given this 50 years of amnesty, so to speak, to continue the way things are. That's going to be very short-lived. That's going to be very short-lived. Hong Kong is going to be swallowed up, and Taiwan is going to be swallowed up. It's going to be the one government, that one authoritarian government. That's what's going to be enveloping these two countries. China didn't come on the scene as far as a major exporter until about 1995. Hong Kong was an exporter. Taiwan was exporter. Japan was an exporter. Germany has always been way up there. England, you should see how they fall on the list now. China the first, United States the second, and all other countries are falling. Hong Kong is not on the list anymore. You understand?
Yes.
Military might, not yet, but coming. Economic might. Power of people, 1.3 billion or 1.6 billion, whichever number you want to use. I usually tell my cadets, look here, let me explain something to you all. Forget the 1 billion people in China. Forget about the 1 billion people in China. Just concentrate on the 600 million. That is twice our current population of the United States. Forget about the 1 billion. We can't deal with that. Let's concentrate on what we can handle. The 600 million that is looking at our 300 million. Let's focus on that.
In conclusion, General, what value, because, you know, there are those who look through the vistas of life through the prism of militarism, through the prism of war making. And we know that China is a nuclear power, the United States is a nuclear power. We know that there's something called MAD, mutually assured destruction. Once nuclear missiles start flying, I think that's the end of human civilization, certainly as we know it. Of what role is diplomacy? You, in fact, I would say to have navigated the shoals of racial prejudice and coming from a small island with an accent to rise to the high ranks of the US Armed Forces, you are a consummate diplomat in your own right. I'm sure there are lots of times you had to zip it to make it. What role would diplomacy play in heading off what could be a global conflagration if we do not understand the importance of diplomacy?
If you don't understand diplomacy, you are playing with ignorance. Ignorance can lead to death. That's death. You can't, we, America, can promise to help and stand in the way of certain things, but you've got to look at the inevitable. It is, you cannot stop that giant. I remember when the Japanese naval commander says, we have awakened a sleeping giant when we attacked Pearl Harbor.
That was Yamamoto.
Right. He said, I'm afraid we have awakened a sleeping giant. And America was coming. And you couldn't stop it. Where was China? China was being overrun by Japanese through and through. I remember when the Kung Fu movies have a lot of history in them. There's a lot of history in all those Kung Fu movies. It is there, subliminal, but it is there. You see the Chinese being kicked around by the Japanese, calling them dogs and whatnot and whatnot and whatnot. The Kung Fu movie, the Kung Fu series, Kung Fu, played by John Carradine. Back then, they used to look at him as hey, the Chinese guy, and couldn't enter certain buildings, couldn't be in certain places. Get out, get out, get out. the internment of Chinese as well as Japanese during World War II in America, all being treated as you ain't quite American. And today we have that Asian crisis in America. Let me tell you, I'm saying, oh, so you all are feeling it now. You all are feeling it now. Now this is happening in America, and I'm thinking, a few Africans the other day were being kicked around in China. You understand? Were being kicked around in China, being accused of bringing in the coronavirus that originated in China.
That's right.
Okay, we won't call it the Kung Fu virus, or we know it originated down there. How it came out, by mistake in a lab or through an animal making contact, we don't know yet. Who is trying to figure it out? Who is now overrun by Chinese? Because number 45 idiot took us out of the seat we held. Wherever we decided to no longer participate, they jump right in.
So when you say who, you mean the World Health Organization?
Right, the World Health Organization. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And
so you're saying that diplomacy requires the United States, requires folks like us in the Caribbean diaspora to make contact, to keep contact, to build networks, not to get immersed in prejudice.
You've got to. I even look at we send kids from Dominica to China to study, and they are learning Mandarin. They're learning Mandarin, the Chinese proper language, okay, as opposed to Cantonese that is spoken in Taiwan. We know that Taiwan belongs to China. We know. And those who don't know, you're ignorant. If you don't know and you're playing like you don't know, you are ignorant. Because one of these days, the Chinese going to go down to Guam and say, you all need to belong to us. See how far away they are from this US mainland. In closer proximity to China than anything else. Say, you all belong to us just like everything in this area.
Yes,
you understand what I'm saying? What is America going to do? Look where Taiwan is in. Taiwan is at the front door of China. Is front door seat.
Do you believe, General, as a person who's of Caribbean descent, who loves America, who served, that we need to be conscious of what you call imperial overstretch? That is, we get our resources, human and otherwise, so engaged in military engagement that we forget about the importance of building a strong civilian economy. I'm fond of telling my children that China is fighting its war at the following places: Walmart, Target, BJ's, Costco, all the main stores. And they're fighting that war every day and they're winning right here. So that where we may be thinking of missiles and fighter aircraft, they're meeting real human needs through their industrial capacity, while we have almost kind of diminished in industrial capacity. And so that, like with the Caribbean, like with the United States, we have to think about not simply taking gifts, but we have to focus on science, technology, engineering, mathematics, and rebuild our civilian capacity to provide energy, to provide food, to provide clothing, to provide housing, so that we do not have to be going hat in hand to China, which has frankly focused on those things. Your comment before we sign off.
We've got to wake the hell up. We really have to wake the hell up and smell this coffee. You can accept. While you're accepting, be prepared for the price you have to pay. And the price you have to pay, is it going to be on our young uns coming up? What trap are you putting them in? Will they have a voice? Are you leaving them with a voice? You see, If you leave them in deep debt, they have no voice. Are you leaving them with a voice? Will a young Dominican stand up one day and say, all right, you know, I think we have enough? Only to be told, sit down, just as was told to the United States recently. You don't have the capacity. I don't think you no longer have a voice to make those kinds of statements. You know, so sit down. Do you know how hard hitting that was when those statements were made in Alaska to Secretary of State Blinken? I don't think America has that kind of voice anymore. And that was being told by a woman, Chinese woman, telling you that, hey, maybe you better back up. You can't talk like that anymore. You don't have the capacity to talk like that anymore. Yes, General, we have 11 aircraft carriers versus 2. But the number of ships they have, whatever they want to do, they can do. And who holds all our debts?
China. Most of it, China. So General, this has been quite an interesting, you know, we started in Dominica, we went through your service career, rising to the high echelons of US Armed Forces, serving young people, but we came right back to face some of the current strategic challenges and also opportunities for Africa, for the African diaspora, the Caribbean. How do we maintain relationships? How do we use the virtue of patience, the virtue of diplomacy, making sure we remain productive, and also be mindful of those who come bearing gifts? Always. You mentioned earlier in the discussion we had the Trojan horse. The Greek, was it the Greek story of the Trojans? The Trojans came with a wooden horse, and they saw that out there as a huge gift, and they brought it within the castle. And night, the soldiers who were secreted within that Trojan horse came out and overtook that castle that they've been trying to storm all that time. So I want to just thank you for your service, General. I know we could go on for another day or two, maybe even a week, to uncouple and to reveal all that which you have to teach us. But I'm hopeful that you will maybe serve on a panel that we can put together, maybe other West Indians who have served and others who care about leadership, integrity, and governance, and the future of our Caribbean, the future of our democracies, both in the United States and the Caribbean. Thank you very much for your service. God bless you. And since we're in the spirit of Easter, I want to wish you a happy Easter, and hopefully we'll all meet again at that blessed resurrection. Thank you.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much, John.